Hello my friends and welcome to all the ups and downs for Discovery Season 5 Episode 8, Labyrinths. Before I go on, I just want to remind you again that there will be a written article of the ups and downs. That's written by Jack Kiley every week. Thank you so much for all of the lovely feedback we've been getting on that as well. Reminder that these are different entities, that the ups for one will not necessarily be the ups for another, and myself and Jack will go to war. It's really quite funny. So do check that out over on whatculture.com, and remember, check out our podcast, which drops every week as well. We have a very special episode coming, but I don't want to give away too much. But we have such episodes as our great episode with Elias Tufex that was released recently as well. So do check that out. That drops every Tuesday, and every now and again we just drop an extra episode. With that, let's jump in to this episode. Labyrinth picks up from the action-packed Erika, and we are still reeling from the loss of Locke. In fact, this episode opens with the funeral of the great scion of the Breen Imperium, and you can tell that at least some of the attendees actually are upset by the fact that Locke may be shuffling off this mortal coil. One person who is most definitely affected by this is, of course, Moll. This is the episode in which Eve Harlow really steps into her own, and the story, at least their story, focuses much more on her. For obvious reasons, Locke is dead. That's a pretty good reason to take a back seat, but also the pressure now falls on her for do we as an audience sort of care where the story goes from here, or were they always a double act and that was their power? I would say that Eve manages to pull this off very, very well. She has always been the one that was, for as much as she absolutely loves Locke, something that becomes even more apparent this week, she has been the more thrill-seeking of the two, shall we say. She was the courier who effectively convinced Locke to give up all this Breen nonsense and run off with her. The love that they developed between each other, it was a beautiful thing to see, unless of course you were a Nari. Seeing, if you like, her dealing with the consequences of encouraging Locke to come with her, the consequences being Locke's rapidly chilling or warming corpse. How does it work with the Breen? Not really sure. But either way, seeing her dealing with that, you can tell that she is desperate to fix this, and the progenitors offer a way for that to happen. So, sort of in general, but also this opening scene, Eve Harlow gets an up from me. Something that is completely apparent in the opening scene and right the way through, a whopper of a down for pretty much everything to do with the Primarch. I mean, he's a thoroughly unlikable character. Now, that's necessarily not where the down is coming from. The down is coming from, I could nearly have set a stopwatch to some of the things that he was going to do in this episode. He is completely one note. And it was quite distracting at times when you have, for example, Eve Harlow, who is acting her heart out on the screen. The Breen do have that challenge of they're all hidden behind their helmets. So yeah, that's gonna add a challenge, but my goodness, could they have made the Primarch any more of a mustache twirling baddie? I wanted to get this down up there in the beginning because otherwise I would just be downing every single time he was on screen. He didn't do it for me as a villain. And even the dastardly things that he does are a bit like, but of course. The next thing he's going to do is tie Moll to the tracks. You know what I mean? Now, back aboard Discovery, we jump to and land at the Badlands. Taken up. This is how I imagine the Badlands would have looked in DS9 and Voyager had they had the time and, quite frankly, the budget. And I guess the technology, all of those combined. I'm sure there will be those who will look at this version of the Badlands and go, I miss my DS9 Badlands. There's not many I've heard have said they miss the Caretaker Badlands. They're not awful, but I know even making the show, they were like, yeah, the pink didn't really do it for us. There's supposed to be this area of intense plasma storms and you really don't want to fly there. And you get that impression here with Discovery. I really love this update to how they look. But I tell you what else I love. I love Hyrel. Hyrel is brilliant. Hyrel is an up from me. Oh, she's just so earnest and fun. And I just kind of want to hang out with her. But also because she takes that stereotypical librarian role and completely flips it on its head. Gone is the glasses at the end of the nose shushing you from making any noise. And here is someone who is genuinely excited by books, by knowledge, by archiving. And it's really refreshing to see that just removal of this age-old trope. I couldn't get enough of Hyrel. I can't imagine we'll be spending much more time in the archive after this episode, but I would love to see her again. And even when she's issuing that little warning or joke, they're not really quite sure about how to get through the Badlands, it's still good-natured, and then they enter the Badlands and you're like, oh my. Oh, Discovery's going to have 7 levels of tar kicked out of it, which it does. We have the requisite Discovery flamethrower, which has been installed on the bridge. Not really sure I support that decision, but we get there anyway, and it's a gorgeous image of seeing the ship fly through. If you look closely as well, this is one of the fun things about the detached nacelles. You can kind of see them doing that a little bit. Whoops, on either side of the ship. Gallo and Asha, who are... Look, we've had more time with Gallo and Asha than we've had with Oo and Detmer this season, which I'm going to come to in a second. I just like the way they play off each other. I think that they're a good pair. I mean, I bemoan the fact that we only have at most 2 more episodes with them, because I feel like we got more with the season 5 crew of Discovery than we did with the first 4 seasons. Well, for some of them. But just really enjoyed them as a pair. That was an up for me, and please take a giant up for that gorgeous archive sitting in that oasis in the middle of the Badlands. That's really stunning. I have to say, that was a beautiful, beautiful design. Now, I need to address something that's a bit of a down. Oosakon, Detmer, Saru. So we've now had 4 episodes in a row without Saru in them. And I mean, this is evidence from the opening credits. Basically, there's no Doug Jones. We jump straight to Anthony Rapp. And it's like the opening credits are like, you're not getting him this week either. I'm not downing the opening credits. What I am downing is the fact that here are 3 supposedly core members of Discovery's crew, and we've spent the guts of half a season without them. Now, for Doug Jones, at least we know that Doug was engaged on the press tour for Hocus Pocus 2 while season 5 was being filmed. So there is a reason, sure, there is a reason why Doug Jones isn't there. I have yet to see the reason why neither Oosakon or Detmer have been so present. It feels like they were just written out. This is going to be compounded by the fact that it's the final season, which I know they didn't know going into season 5. I do have sympathy there, don't get me wrong. Anyway, just for a season as it is, to just sideline 3 characters, because Saru's barely got a name drop. Whatever about, we know Doug Jones wasn't around, but he's barely had a name drop. I'm gonna do it. My trilithium down, yes, I have skipped my trillium down. My trilithium down of the season is the lack of Saru, Oosakon, and Detmer. You're under no obligation to agree with me that it's the worst thing about the season. And yes, it's made worse by the fact that it's the final season of Discovery. I'm very disappointed by the lack of them and the lack of acknowledgement of that. I'm fairly certain that when it comes to next week, we should at least, it's the part 1 of a 2-part finale. I'm assuming we'll at least get Doug Jones. But to have an entire season and you've taken out core members, maybe this is more so Oosakon and Detmer than Saru, just feels like a very odd choice. And it was enough for us. When we go through one of these episodes, myself, Chris, and Jack, of course, as well, we note what are the things that we spend talking about the most. And the lack of them is one of the things that we spent talking about the most this week. It takes us out of the episode. And anything that takes you out of an episode generally runs the risk of getting it down anyway, and this is episode after episode after episode. So there it is, trilithium down. Now, for those of you unfamiliar with a trilithium down, you will have noted the up counter went down by 1. A trilithium down takes 1 up away, in the same way that a dilithium up will take 1 down away. just to make sure we're all on the same page as that. Back to some positive things. So we go and we see Hyrel in person, and she is just as delightful and talks about sending people to dungeons or more oubliettes, which I am kind of thinking she means. But we get to our viewing rooms, and there it is finally, the book by Dr. Marina Derricks, love it, Labyrinths of the Mind. I just like how, I like in a way how simple the setup is. Here is a book, it is written in Betazoid script, and after Book leaves and goes to his viewing room, but after Burnham opens it, and there is what is patently a transmitter there, of course this was going to like play on telepathy, Betazoid. So I really, really like that. I also like, when Book goes to his own viewing room for what turns out to be a cutting from the Quajon world route, which was very touching. Hyrel going, "Is your name really Book? How fun that a book comes to visit me. Oh, taken up. I just want to hang out with her. She's just so lovely." This episode does, I think, a better job than some of the other ones of fitting Book into the story. Some have felt a bit egregious. No, Book feels very much a part of this story. From the final sort of, we didn't fix things aboard Discovery, to once Burnham wakes up in her mindscape and David Ajala is playing the program that is set to help her figure out this clue. The logic that goes into Burnham's journey in this week is completely sound. We have Book in the real world, who gets his moment with the Quajon world route, which is really quite lovely, and then there's a little bit of running around and shooty, but it's really more to do with what's going on in Burnham's mind. But it's serious, it seriously works. So the entire program of Book, for me, that's an up. And I love how David Ajala plays him, because he plays him, there's both a lot of Bookisms in it, but also there's this aloof, slightly camp way that he plays him as well, which I really dug as they're walking through the hallways of this beautiful library, which of course is a real world location. They're walking through the Thomas Fisher Rare Book Library at the University of Toronto, and now I really want to visit there. Shall we all take a visit to the University of Toronto? Okay, cool, see you there. Even the fact that this book is, by design, slightly obtuse, and we get that great line of Burnham going, "Oh, my mind should have picked Tilly," taken up. The double team seriously works. And I like as well the literal interpretation of the library in the mindscape, and how Burnham has to work through seeing things as they appear and seeing them for what they really are. Burnham reckons that perhaps the test is to have the seeker look into the past, look at history for how one can learn how to use this fearsome technology of the progenitors. So she reckons that it will be in the archives section on the Dominion War. Away they go together. They're checking books on the Dominion War, on other wars. There's, nothing in the history of the mirror universe even. And she goes, "Oh, am I on the right track?" And the program of book says, "No." There's just that moment. You can see the frustration in her. She's like, "You might have mentioned something," because this book isn't allowed to help. He can sort of guide, but he can't directly go, "There's the clue." I did enjoy that. And then there's this moment where, of course, she figures out that it's all a maze, labyrinths of the mind clues in the book. And there's this great overhead shot where they extrapolate what the maze might look like. And that's an up as well. It's just a beautiful design. Once Burnham entered this mindscape, of course, she was then discovered passed out in the real world by Book and Hyrel, which leads to Culber and Rayner beaming over to the archive in an attempt to help, thus leaving, taken up, Reese in command of Discovery, seriously on board there, when the Breen arrive, because of course they do. Hyrel does attempt to stall them. We get more scenes with the Primarch where I'm just like, whoops, so they arrive beside the archive. Discovery hides in the Badlands. It's the only thing they can do. There's some techno-babble as to, oh, the cloak won't work, but then their cloak won't work, but all that magic technology won't work right now, but it's fine. Trope of Star Trek, totally fine with it. So they're hiding while the Primarch is Primarching, and Rayner and Book decide to hide behind a shelf. We actually, because for the Easter eggs, we were like, well, we're gonna have to see what we can see in these shelves. So we went through, and in this archive that's set in the 32nd century, we can confirm that there are no copies of George R.R. Martin's The Winds of Winter or A Song of Spring. He just never got around to them, I guess. We checked to see if there was any in the Brandon Sanderson section, but alas, none there either. In Burnham's Mindscape, she goes, right, to figure out this maze, all you gotta do is mark off where you've already been. So the Mindscape version of Book gives her a bucket full of sand, which is, in our opinion, a TARDIS for the amount of sand that comes out of this. But she manages to mark her way along, breadcrumbing, and she arrives at, the door where I need to get through. She opens the door and, what the hell? Take a nub, Sonequa Martin Green, for the way you deliver that line, because all she's got back to is just, it's not the reading or the viewing room. It's how would you say? I'm going to call it a little atrium. It's not, but I'm going to use that word. So she arrives back at this atrium, and there's Mindscape Book sitting there going, "You really thought you had it, didn't you?" There's a lot of really important parts of this episode that come from here, but, Burnham, very understandably frustrated, and you're just like, what do you need me to do? I've done this. And he just calmly goes, they didn't ask for you. Take an up. The way that it is explained here, I think, is crucial for us as an audience, but for Burnham as a character. We know Burnham only means well, and we know that Burnham will make sure that this progenitor's tech is taken care of. Like, we know that. But scientists 800 years in the past didn't know that. The tests are set up in such a way that whomever manages to figure it out must have the ability to pass all of these tests. And this harkens back to taking things as they appear versus taking things as they are. Burnham believes that she's figuring out the test as laid before her, none of which is the test. And this is crucial here because she fights it. She's not immediately ready to just accept that. She starts working through, why have I chosen this location? Well, because the mission is the most important place. Why did I choose you, Book, to be the interface? Well, because we didn't fix it earlier on. And it looks like she is making progress, but it's not enough. And I think we're looking at a core character moment for Michael Burnham in this scene. Back outside, to make sure that we're all aware that the stakes are raised, the Breen have started to fire what is effectively a shield tunneling weapon at the archive, which, taken up, I think this is a really good idea. Rather than fire at all parts of the shield at one go, just focus it on one part. Makes the most sense, really. Rayner orders Discovery to do something about it. Nice and vague there, but hey, sure, listen, I get it. And we get that fun scene down in engineering, obligatory Reno taken up, where Adira, Stamets, and Reno start to figure out, okay, how can we collapse this tunnel? Well, Adira figures out the resonance of this beam, and that allows Reno to go, well, hang on, one of my previous jobs, which is a lovely callback to an episode ago, they're able to figure out that if they fire a positron beam of a certain modulating frequency, they can disrupt this shield tunnel, which they managed to do. It's a fun scene, and you have them, speaking about harmonizing beams in harmony. Yeah, just for the silliness of it, but also I liked that. That was good. There is a crucially funny, brilliant bit of this scene as well. Well, Reno speaking about her previous experience. By Hesperia. What is Hesperia, some of you may ask? Hesperia is the Ren-Fair planet that was introduced in Star Trek Lower Decks, from which Billups hails. Outstanding. So something that was created in Lower Decks has now crossed over into live action. That was brilliant. Fun. Also, of all the planets, Hesperia, the Ren-Fair planet, so on board with that. There's dragons and stuff there. And yeah, Reno's right. They do know how to party. I mean, we've seen in Lower Decks how much they know how to party. So totally on board for all of that. That is a whopper of an up from me. Now, although they do manage to close the shield tunnel, some of the Breen do get on board. Maul is the one who says, well, hang on, because at this point the Breen don't know Discovery is there, but Maul is the one to go, hang on, your soldiers are being knocked out one by one. The Primarch asks for feed from inside. We get what's effectively a first-person video game shot of Book knocking a Breen on their ass. But then we do get, take that, you gelatinous assholes. I get it's coming from Raynor, but racist much? Of course, all of this is just to add to the tension. We're in the final stages now with Burnham in the mindscape. The lights are turning off all around, suggesting that Burnham's mind is dying in this mindscape. And we get this beautiful, effectively closing monologue from Sonequa Martin Green. Well, first but easily just taken up there. And it's how she is coming to terms with the things she knows about herself, but the things that we all bury. Because, you know, there is that argument that if we walk around all of the time carrying everything on our sleeve, well, how would we get through life? You know, you put up these barriers, you put up these walls because everything takes a knock on your day-to-day life. Not everything is going to knock you over, but the weight that she carries from beginning her career, at least on Discovery, as a mutineer to becoming its captain. And this is a theme that's played throughout the season as well, when we've met previous version of Burnham into this version of Burnham, and how so much of their lives are action into action into action, that there's not an awful lot of time for introspection. This, if nothing else, is a massive counselling session, and to see Sonequa Martin Green deliver this final monologue with the emotion and the growth and the acceptance and just that one tear that she just wipes away, and she's not pushing away emotion, she's accepting it's part of her. I mean, for me, it was an easy Latinum up of the week. Just probably one of my favorite scenes that Sonequa Martin Green has done in all of Discovery. It is enough for the program to go, right, you've passed the test. You know, we need someone to be sure of themselves, that they're not sitting there covered in self-doubt. And we had to think about this as well, like, you know, why would self-doubt? Well, are you sure of yourself to protect it? Or like you think, is there a chance you could go either way? That's how I interpret that. Be interested to see, how do you interpret it? Let me know in socials, and let me know in the comments to this as well. How did you interpret how she passes the test here? She is, of course, given one piece of information that we as the audience do not hear, which is what will be needed when they get to their final destination. Then she wakes up, there's a quick run through the library, they smash a crystal, because smashy smashy, why not? They get the final clue, even back on board Discovery. Then we get the standoff. She takes Discovery out of the Badlands, face off with the Breen, says, hey Breen, your problem is with us. And the Primarch, completely without any kind of surprise, is like, haha, but I do have a whole lot of hostages right here, which I suppose technically, yeah, I do kind of see his point at this point. The Breen were always going to get their hands on this technology, because otherwise, where's your climax? And they do, because they hold Discovery effectively to ransom. Now, she gets him to declare a Tergoon. Burnham knows an awful lot about Breen, considering she saw her first Breen in the flesh, so to speak, 3 episodes ago. But anyway, yeah, make an absolute promise, declare a Tergoon that you won't hurt the archive in any way. And yeah, you can see Maul as well is a bit like, yeah, you can beat Discovery. I'm not saying destroy Discovery, especially when, boom, they add the final clue, we get our map location, so Discovery has it, that gets sent over to the Breen, so they get the map location. Then there is, which I love things like this. This was a scene that actually reminds me, I should do this in Station Observations, but throwback to TNG Peak Performance, that they make it look as though Discovery's been destroyed in order to confuse the Breen. It's very like when Riker made it look like the Hathaway was destroyed to confuse the Ferengi. Simultaneously detonating a bunch of plasma and then jumping, Discovery ends up, well, it's 22 years short of their destination, 22 light years short of their destination, but they're there, they're survived, and they know where they're going. Back in the Badlands, the Primarch orders the Breen to fire on the archive. Take it down. Just take it down. I mean, like, not only, again, I've been good, I've been very good, I haven't downed every scene that he's been in, but this was just like, of course. And then you get Maul challenges him, and then one of the Breen speaks up, and he's so over the top, like, this is the price of failure, kills random lieutenant, things like that. I have to say, and this might sound a bit grim, but I'm gonna up Maul for not just killing him, but double tapping to make sure he stays down, thus ending the episode with Maul more or less in control of the Breen. And I'm very interested to see where that goes, but before we go anywhere there, sign up to the Master Replicas mailing list. Make sure that you retweet myself, Ellie, and Chris. Their competition posts, you'll see them. They're on all of our pages. Make sure that you're liking and following, and you could be in with a chance to win the XL DS9 model signed by Nana Visitor. We have more giveaways coming up as well. We have more next week and the week after. We will give more details. Once each week ends, we will bring you details on the next one. There are some cool ones coming, folks. So please make sure that you're doing that. You know what a model enthusiast I am. There's a reason I am. These models are cool. So thank you, Master Replicas, for partnering with us. Ye are all awesome. Now, should we go and have a look at some eggs? We get the Badlands, we get Hyrel, who is an Efrosian. We get the order for Discovery to cut engines and allow its momentum to carry it through the Badlands, which we feel is very like when Ezri was going after Worf in Penumbra. Inside the archive, we have the Andorian, we have an Antican. Now, obviously, it's a little bit different from how the Anticans appeared in TNG Lonely Among Us, but the reason we're more or less convinced it's an Antican is because earlier on in the season we had the Sealay, both of whom were introduced in Lonely Among Us. We have, of course, references to Beta Z. The oubliette, I don't think this is an Easter egg for the movie Labyrinth, but also it is absolutely an Easter egg for the movie Labyrinth. Are you kidding me? The fact that she says we have an oubliette. Come on, 80s kids, you must remember everything from Hoggle, the Worm, David Bowie's Bulge. Whoops, the Betazoid symbol is present on all of the sides of the pages of the book, Labyrinths of the Mind. There's that word labyrinth again. The world root of Quajon, which of course we've seen in previous episodes before. So basically nice to see that this feels like they're setting up that at least a new Quajon will come into existence. It is a nucleonic emitter that creates the mindscape in Burnham's mind. Nucleonic, of course, we're looking back to episodes like The Inner Light here, and it was, Jean-Luc got hit by a nucleonic beam. References to the Dominion War. On board the Breen Dreadnought, of course, there's other little support ships floating around. There's a couple of scenes where there's one, now I don't think it's the Breen warship from DS9, nearly 1,000 years have gone by, but it looks like at least to be inspired by that asymmetrical shape. Whether in the history section, we get references to the Dominion War, Betazoid history, Trill history, Mirror Universe history. Dr. Derek's checked out things like Talaxian hairstyles, Pyrian folk tales. There is a very fun moment when Burnham is arguing with Mindscape Book, and she says, enough of this psychobabble. Psychobabble, Beta Z, Q and all good things, giving out to Picard for listening to Councillor Troy's pedantic psychobabble. We have already referenced and of course upped Hesperia. There is a fantastic addition to Discovery's bridge crew at the end of the episode as well. When Gallo and Naya have been sent on an assignment, Commander Jemison takes the con. And if that isn't a reference to Dr. Mae Jameson, who was of course the first African-American female astronaut in space, I mean, I don't know what is. Of course, we saw Dr. Jameson before in the episode Second Chances, which was directed by LeVar Burton. That's everything for our episode this week. Folks, thank you so much for watching along. This was a busy episode and it still had time for introspection, which I really liked. What did you like the most about it? What did you like the least about it? Let us know. Remember, please do check out Jack's article as well, because there will be differences between the two. We have a lot of fun actually going through them, so do enjoy that too. Make sure to please follow us on all the various socials. I'm at Sean Ferrick. We are at TrekCulture. Don't forget to follow at Jack Kiley 74656 and of course at Edit Course Edit as well. We will be back next week with everything for episode 9. I can't believe it's nearly finished, of Star Trek Discovery season 5. Until then, make sure that you live long and prosper. Make sure that you look after yourself. All we want in this world is for people to lay down arms and to get along and to treat each other with love and peace. Peace is our goal. Peace is the only thing that is going to help us survive in the future. Everything else, folks, move forward with peace. You are awesome. You are wonderful. I will see you next week. Thank you so much.